Welcome students. The poem that we are going to discuss in this class is written by Andrew Marvell and it is titled To His Coy Mistress. Mistress is the beloved, coy is for shy. Andrew Marvell is another metaphysical poet prescribed in your syllabus. We have read George Herbert and John Donne earlier, and in my previous lecture, I had also given a short introduction about all these three metaphysical poets and about metaphysical poetry. To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvell is a perfect example of metaphysical poetry. The poem, it became very popular and is one of the most remarkable poem written by Andrew Marvell. The poem is addressed to the beloved of the speaker, the poet, and she appears to be coy, she appears to be shy, she is not responding to the demands of the speaker. And the entire poem is written in the classical tradition of Latin love elegy, in which the speaker, he appeals to his mistress or to his beloved through the motif of carpe diem, or seize the day, that time is short and therefore they have to make the maximum use of time. The poem To His Coy Mistress, written by Andrew Marvell, was most likely written in the 1650s and was not published until the 1680s to Marvell's death. It urges the beloved or the young women to enjoy the pleasures of life or to respond to the demand of the lover before they turn old or before they die. So the speaker, he dwells upon the idea of mortality and he urges his beloved that because the time that is given to them is short, they do not have enough time, therefore they should enjoy pleasure in each other's company, and through love making they can make the most of their brief time that is there on the earth, and they make the maximum utilization of time. So keeping this argument to his beloved, the poet goes on appealing to the emotions of the beloved and he tries to prove his point logically also, giving arguments after arguments to prove his point. I had told you earlier also that metaphysical poetry, it deals very cleverly when the speaker or the poet, they actually act as a clever lawyer trying to prove their points by giving strong arguments one after another. Metaphysical poetry also consists in conceits, which were far-fetched similes, similes brought from the farthest or dissimilar sources. So notice the similes in the poem when you read the poem. Again, To His Coy Mistress celebrates beauty, youth, and in fact, it is haunted by mortality. It is haunted by death. So the speaker, he is quite ready to appeal to his mistress. He is quite ready to pass his time in courtship for a long time, but he believes that because death comes to all, so it will also come to them, because old age comes to all, therefore it will also come to them. So before death and old age comes to them, their love should reach its due consummation. and therefore they should make the maximum use of time. So let us read the text and discuss the poem. Had we but word enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. Thou by the Indian Ganges side shouldst rubies find. I by the tide of Humber would complain. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. So, the poem, it is addressed to the beloved. It is written for the beloved, and the speaker, he opens the poem in a very abrupt manner. The argument, it is continuing between the lover and the beloved, and the speaker, he elaborates his dialogue right from the beginning of the poem. And the theme of the poem comes out in the very first line, that had we but word enough and time, had this word would have been given to us forever, or we would be having the time forever, if we would have been eternal, if we would have been immortal, then this coyness, it was no crime. Means the beloved turning down the proposal of the lover would not be a crime if they had enough time. But because the time is short, and had the time been longer, we would sit down and think which way to walk, pass our long love's day by the Indian Ganges side. So he's just trying to prove that had they been having enough time, they could have passed their time together with each other and in various places, so that they could compliment and admire each other either by the Indian Ganges side or by the tide of Humber, until he would be able to woo and convince his beloved. And 10 years before the flood, until the conversion of the Jews, to the last day that is specified, means they could have gone and they could have continued in the period of courtship. So in the beginning, the poet refers to the impossible stretches of time during which, had the time been enough for them, they could have continued the courtship for a long time, as much as it pleased the beloved. Further, the poet says, my vegetable love should grow vaster than empires and more slow, and 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze, 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest, an age at least to every part, and the last age should show your heart. For lady, you deserve the state, nor would I love at lower rate. So the speaker, he uses the metaphor vegetable love, and it shows a slow and steady growth that might increase to vast proportions. So he is actually trying to woo his lover and trying to prove his argument that had enough time been with them, then he could have taken hundreds and thousands of years to praise and to appeal to the beauty of the beloved, means writing poetries or extolling each and every part of beloved. And he considers that the lady is so beautiful, and he actually puts his lady or his beloved to such a high state that he could have gone in years and years to praise each and every faculty or each and every part of the beloved, and he would not have compromised at a lower rate, because she deserved this praise, she deserves this flattery from the part of the poet, from the part of the. So in the previous lines, the poet says that his beloved, she clearly deserves a very superior stature and appeal and flattery from the part of the poet, and he is also quite ready to flatter her and to praise her beauty. But in these lines, the poet says, "But at my back I always hear Time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity." So, the beauty of the beloved, it is limitless, and even the poet can go on praising the beauty of the beloved for a very long time, for innumerable years, but the resistance comes because the speaker, he asserts that I always hear at my back Time with his wings and in his chariot coming near. So the mortality of life, the theme of the poem, enters in this 21st line of the poem. And after death, when time comes to them and it takes away the time, what lies before them is deserts of vast eternity. So, because the poet says that they do not know that what would happen to them in that eternity, which is like a desert. So they should make maximum use of time which is given to them during this life, during the time when they are living, during the time when they are mortal. The poet further says, "Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. The grave is a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace." So the poet, he moves on to the nature of human life, which is mortal. So since all of us, we are given a very short time on this earth, therefore the poet, he goes on presenting his argument that why he is appealing for love making to his beloved, or why his demand should be sanctioned by the beloved. Because time is limited, and therefore they should make maximum use of time. So the poet, he shows the horrors of death to his beloved, that when she dies and she is buried in grave in the marble vault, the beauty would no longer be there. So beauty, youth and virtues, they are there for a very short time, till the time when people, they are living. So nobody would be craving for the beloved while she is lying in the grave. It would only be the worms. And so the poet, he says that in the name of honor, in the name of coyness, while you are trying to subdue my demands or reject my demands, you should think that ultimately all of us, we are going to lead us towards grave, because time that is given to us is very short. And very ironically, the poet says, the grave is a fine and it is a private place. It can be a meeting place, but nobody goes to the grave to embrace. So the speaker, he just thinks that Once dead, the virtues, the beauty of the beloved would lie in the grave along with the body as it turns to dust. So, the chance for the lover and the beloved to join together would be lost forever once they die. So, the poem argues on the level of juxtaposition between death and death or mortality or lovemaking, or the youth which is given to them for a very short time. So in these lines the poet says, "Now therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may, and now like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour, than languish in his slow jabbed power." Now look how cleverly the poet argues to prove his point. So he has just shown that ultimately, because the time is short, the youth that is given to them is again shorter. So before they should move on to grave, or before they should move on to the desert or to eternity, of which they do not know anything, while they are together in this world, they should make the maximum use of the youthful time which is given to them. So the poet appeals, and through his arguments, through his words, through his forceful communication, he attempts to win over the lady, and he compares the lady's skin to a vibrant and to a kind of a hue, like a color which is there in the morning dew, means the kind of freshness that is there in the morning dew. So he is saying that why he is appealing to the beauty of the beloved, because she is young. So he appeals to his beloved that before time, it comes and it devours all. It comes and it takes up into possession everything. Before they die, they should make the maximum use of their youthful hue, youthful time, and engage in the sport or engage in the pleasures of love making. Because once the time it is lost, then they would only languish and they would repent for the time which has gone. So because time, it does not wait for anyone, therefore they should make the maximum use of time. So further the poet says, "Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run." So the poet, he urges the beloved to enjoy the pleasures of life before death claims them. And since the time that is given to them is very short, and life, it would end in a rough strife, and we have to pass through the iron gates of life to the vast eternity, to the grave, to the desert. So before that time, we should enjoy the time with pleasure in the company of each other. The poet appeals to his beloved. And in the final lines, the poet says that through this love making, through the company of each other, we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run. In Marvel's time, it was the Ptolemaic theory that believed that Earth is the center, and the sun and the other planets, they rotate round the Earth. So it was thought to create time, and the poet says that only in their company, only in the pleasure that they enjoy with each other, that they can pursue time and make time run and enjoy time. This To His Coy Mistress is a love poem, and it celebrates beauty, youth, and the pleasure of love making. But the poem is based upon the theme of mortality. The poet, he believes that to enjoy the pleasures of love and to woo his mistress, he could have gone in for time immemorial, admiring the beauty, the innocence, and the physical features of the beloved in the process to appeal to his love. But since human life is short and they do not have enough time, so the poet appeals to the beloved that they should enjoy the company of each other while they can, means while the time they are young, because when they are embraced by death, when death would come to them, it would be an end to this life as well as to the pleasure that they are enjoying. To His Coy Mistress is written in Iambic Tetrameter, where the lines consist of 4 iambic feet. So the poem itself is written like a poetic thesis, where it poses a problem at the forefront and it gives a sort of solution at the end, that why the beloved, she should agree to the demands of the lover, and he tells out the reason also, that the reason it is attributed to human mortality and to the short life that is given to them. So a man trying to get his beloved's affection tries to argue very forcefully, bringing the imagery from various sources to prove his point. The poem contains various literary devices that make the speaker's argument quite strong and emotionally very forceful. So the coyness or the shyness of the mistress is regarded as a crime. It is a metaphor. And the poet thinks that as a criminal or as a murderer, he kills a person. Similarly, the coyness of the lady is killing the amorous or the affectionate or the desires of the lover. There is the use of alliteration as well as personification, and the poet uses several hyperboles, and in an exaggerated overtone, the poet gives his argument to appeal to the beloved to have sensual pleasures with the lover, because the time that is given to them is very short. Metaphysical poetry, as To His Coy Mistress is a metaphysical poem, is a kind of poetry which is popularized in the late 17th century. You can refer to my earlier lecture where I have given a short introduction of metaphysical poetry and its traits in reference to all the 3 poets that are prescribed in your syllabus. So religion, faith, and belief, they were the subjects of metaphysical poetry, but love also was a very popular subject as far as metaphysical poetry was concerned. I told you earlier also that these metaphysical poets, they were men of learning, and to show their learning and to show their shrewdness and the way they were clever in presenting their arguments was the motive of the metaphysical poets. So through their rhymes, through their poetry, they were reasoned poets who were strongly giving their reasons to prove their points. Andrew Marvell, born in 1621 and died in 1678, is a remarkable metaphysical poet. To His Coy Mistress is Andrew Marvell's best known poems. It focuses on the arguments of a speaker who is attempting to appeal to his beloved for sensual pleasures or for appealing to his demands. Marvell's poetry focused upon man's place in the universe, his existence, love, and religion. So, the poem that we have read, To His Coy Mistress, is a very clever, it is a well structured poem, and in effect, it is a dramatic monologue where there's a speaker and he's appealing to the beloved who is a silent listener. And the arguments or the progression of his reasons are quite logical. In stage after stage, in argument after argument, the poet, he is trying to effort to win his lady's head as well as his heart, means by appealing to the reason or to the mental faculties, by satisfying her through his reasons, he is trying to win over the love of his lady.